Has Ukraine liberated even more territory in Zaporizhzhia? And is Russia trying to rob Peter to pay Paul to maintain their defenses? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's June 12th, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. Okay, first, let's take a look at the control map. There's been actually two substantive changes over the last really only about 12 hours. The first is here where Ukrainian forces have officially announced their liberation of Storozhevi. The reason this is significant, again, it's been listed for for about a day as being in Ukrainian hands, but Ukraine's Ministry of Defense generally doesn't announce these things unless they're certain that it's going to remain true. There's nothing more embarrassing than announcing you've liberated a territory only to find it getting rolled back. So this says that they're confident their defensive lines have locked in and that Russians have fully retreated to a previous position. Where things I think are even more interesting is here, the village of Novodarivka. And while itself not anything special, you can see literally it looks like a one-stoplight town, as we say in the United States. The significance is, of course, that this entire Russian formation here in Rivnopil is probably going to start to have to make some tough decisions. You can see there's only one route in and out of Rivnopil, and with pressure coming in on two sides, there's a pretty good chance that Russian forces in this entire region are going to either have to retreat or risk being annihilated as they try to exfil through this lone route. Now, Russia, or Ukraine rather, may simply try to push into Staromayorsk. If they could seize this, then you can see that it doesn't even matter if they retreat. They're going to run into a Ukrainian formation down this roadway. So this is potentially very bad news for Russia, and they should be thinking, at least at this point, about how they're going to conduct a withdrawal of forces. A good defensive plan, this won't be a surprise. This will be something that, again, a really well-trained army is going to know or a good, well-trained unit is going to know at the start of this defensive fight where their fallback positions are. They're going to know who's falling back when, who's going to maintain contact, how they're going to bound back. They're going to have all of that planned out. And from what we've seen, Russia, again, when you give the Russian military, the Russian state, when you give them time to plan, when you give them time to organize, they operate slowly, but they are effective, right? They're like a steamroller, you know. Once they get going, then they can be very hard to stop. So I suspect, I won't be surprised. That's from what we've heard of this defensive operation. Russia has been very effective. They are acquitting themselves fairly well. So I expect there'll be a reasonable withdrawal in contact or break contact drill back to Staromayorsk or other prepared defensive positions. Still, if these forces retreat, you may see Ukraine try to maintain their offensive, right? Keep the pressure on Russia. While we're not seeing the breakthrough yet that we were hoping to, this is growing amounts of momentum in Ukraine's favor. And every time Russian forces fall back, their positions are a little more shaky. These troops, right, in this conduct a break contact, even if they have prepared defensive positions, they may still incur casualties. It may require some level of integration when they get to those positions. They may not be as robust as their primary defensive points. And so all of that favors Ukraine, who hopefully can prevent Russia from digging in again, and will keep their momentum alive by driving Russian forces continually back. Once you grow that momentum of forcing the enemy back and never letting them rest and reestablish their defenses, that's when you start to, that's the next phase in a breakthrough. It's sort of like trying to imagine trying to break a balloon by sticking your finger into the membrane, right? At first, it's going to barely bend at all. It's going to take a lot of effort. Then you're slowly going to start to make progress. And then as the membrane stretches thin, it's going to stretch out to its limits. You're going to be as deep in as you can. And then finally, the membrane will break. That's how this is going to go. It's going to be like a wave. Slow, steady progress. Slowly, the pressure will start to break Russian units, first a little and then all at once. So I think, again, despite the Russian propaganda machine claiming that things are not going according to plan, I think Ukraine is executing the plan, the exact plan that it hoped to. The exact details, right, are up to Russia, where they're going to be vulnerable. But this is what you would see for launching an offensive like this. And they're attacking a frontal assault on prepared defensive positions. So the breaking process is work. What I found most interesting, and actually, if you want some of the footage, my breakdowns of the footage from this fight, you can find that at combatvetnews.com. Only 1% of the viewers of this channel actually are members of Combat Vet News. And any one of these membership tiers is going to get you access to the exclusive room on the Discord and is going to get you access to the members only content. And this is a weekly video where I do an analysis of the most viral combat videos of the week. In last week, of course, we saw the convoy of Bradley IFVs and Leopard tanks getting taken out by Russian forces. We break down what really is going on and what that commander is thinking. And a lot of people claim it was a mistake or a commander bunching their troops up too much, but I explain why I don't think that's the case. We also see some of the absolute highest quality GoPro footage I've ever seen of Ukrainian scouting company conducting a raid against Russian targets. So if you want that and you want to support the channel and become that top 1%, you can join at combatvetnews.com. And, if you're interested, right, you can also check us out at the strategicsitrep.com. This is my weekly newsletter of all the national security news, not just Ukraine, straight to your inbox, no spin, no clickbait, just what you need to know. You can sign up for free at the strategicsitrep.com. We're almost at 5,000 members of Strategic Sitrep, which is awesome. So if you want to try to join in and get us to right over that 5,000th member, that would be super cool. Okay, talking about the combat map. This is sort of interesting. Again, Russia, 25 offensive actions over the last 24 hours or so, and you can see they are focused entirely along the Eastern Front. This makes sense based on what we know about Russian tactics. I think they really want to pin Ukrainian forces in place, force them to continually engage Russian forces and not get repositioned elsewhere. There are some rumors, right, that Ukraine is also pushing in the Donetsk region. There's even rumors that they are pushing near Crimea and Lyman. Warmapper has actually reported that there have been marginal gains near this Bilohorivka, near Crimea. You can see here's Crimea, and then here's these, again, fairly marginal gains, but it still says that Ukraine is actually pivoting its forces away from the defensive, which I think itself is sort of interesting and telling. I'm not a fan. I'm an economy of force guy. And I, even as a platoon leader in Afghanistan, I had a bias for simple plans that everyone can understand. So when I see an offensive like this getting dispersed along 1, 2, 3, possibly 4 major fronts, I worry that there's not going to be enough reserve combat power to really deliver the knockout blow once you've got the enemy on the back foot. Because remember, when you break enemy lines, the next phase is exploitation, and you have to have some tanks, some brigades at the ready, not doing anything else, ready to drive through that hole and create absolute chaos for the enemy in the backfield. Once you've done that, then you're going to see some real territorial changes, but you have to get them to that point. You have to have those troops available. And right now, the more I see Ukrainian offensives spread out, the more I worry that those troops aren't available. Because if you want, if you think you're going to push near Crimea, then they're going to want to have a reserve force to exploit gains, exploit breakthroughs. If you're pushing in Bakhmut, you're going to want to have a reserve force to exploit breakthroughs. If you're pushing in 5 different locations in Zaporizhzhia, then you're going to want to have a bunch of brigades on standby, ready to exploit breakthroughs. Do you see how very quickly that you can run out of people? This is a classic military problem where what sounds like a simple operation, when you total the number of support and the number of tactical formations you need to execute it, suddenly the simple becomes complicated. And I do sort of worry about Ukraine running itself into that problem. But as you guys could see, it's still not a bad situation to be in. The only other note that I thought was interesting, first off, Ukrainian Deputy Minister of Defense has reported that Russian forces are transferring some of their most combat-capable units away from Kherson towards Bakhmut and Zaporizhzhia. This, of course, would explain that. This, of course, would provide justification for Russia for blowing up the KHPP dam in order to basically, they say shorten their defensive lines in Kherson, but think of it as making them more efficient. You can see here that with this with a large natural barrier, you can disperse your defensive efforts much, much more, because it's going to be very hard for Ukraine to cross forces en masse. And so they can man this entire line with a much lighter dispersion of troops, freeing up troops to go and fight in Zaporizhzhia or Donetsk. So just another fact to think about. Anyway, guys, that is really all I had for you for today. Thanks, as always, to the Colonel tier members of CombatVetNews.com, as well as our Lieutenant tier members. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much, and I will see all you guys in the next one.